Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Founders. I have my dear friend here, Alyssa, with us today. How are you doing?
10 out of 10. Honestly, it's a really good day.
I love it. She's outside. If I could bring my mic outside, I would set it up. I've thought about it. I thought about buying another mic to do this outside, so maybe I'll do that.
Stop being such a little peasant and get outside.
It's so yes. For those who are tuning in for the first time, this is our series that we do somewhat weekly. Some weeks I do a bunch of these. Some weeks I do one of them. You're my featured guest for the week, Alyssa. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So maybe first we start off. Where are you calling in from today?
Okay, so I'm calling in from Windsor, Ontario, which is where I'm from, where I'm born. I've been here for 3 weeks visiting my family. I haven't seen them in almost 2 years. So came down to hang and, get some family hugs.
I love it. Well, it's funny you mentioned that's where you grew up, because that's normally where I like to start these conversations. So there you go. So if anyone, as people are watching, please drop your questions in the comments and we'll try to get to them as we go. Before we get to Lilia and all the other things you've been doing more recently in your life, I also find it very fascinating to start where you grew up and, what was life like growing up? And, I see there's two different camps. If I would bucket people into two camps, where people I was never going to be an entrepreneur. I was straight A's in schools and, I was on that path until something changed. And the other half was I just picked flowers from my neighbor's backyard and sold it to them. And was hustling. Where on that kind of, camp did you fit in growing up?
I wish I were in the latter camp, but it just feels more like a calling, if you were in that camp. But being perfectly honest, I was not one of those kids who was, hustling, selling flowers or things I found on the streets. So I was born in Windsor and the oldest sister of 3 brothers, which maybe is not surprising. And growing up, my parents split up when I was really young. My parents had me when they were 17 and 18. So we weren't, very well off. It was, small, humble home. And I think I had just a pretty normal childhood. I would categorize it as, was a very good student for most of grade school. And most of high school was not a very good student. Got into lots of trouble and would skip school and things like this. My very first job was at McDonald's. And I think it's kind of funny that now that I got fired from McDonald's for just being generally a shit employee. It's really, and that's maybe true. I think probably for a lot of founders and people who become entrepreneurs is you're just borderline unemployable. So that was what growing up kind of looked like. And then I got my act together in probably grade 11. I attribute a lot of where I'm kind of at now to the friends that I had in high school. That kind of changed the game. We moved from a little bit of a rougher neighborhood in grade school to a little bit of a nicer neighborhood in high school. And so I was around friends who, were really ambitious and who had parents who had these fancy jobs. And so it kind of changed my perspective on, what was possible, what life could look like. And then I went to university in Windsor. So again, applying to an Ivy League school or even outside of Ontario never really crossed my mind. It was just, this was kind of where I was going to go. And one of the pivotal moments for me, I think what set me on the path to entrepreneurship was when I entered university. I had wanted to be a lawyer, which I still think I would be pretty good at. I think as a second life, in another life, I could have been a lawyer.
I feel like every founder too, once you've done it long enough, you gain, I'd say, between a 5% to 20% law degree for all the contracts you write and read yourself, because you don't have the money to hire someone who actually knows what they're doing. So you have to teach it all yourself.
Yeah.
You're I learned so much about indemnity clauses
Yes.
and force majeure. I'm sure everyone's had to deal with that over the past year and a half.
I've learned more about the legal system than I have wanted to. Let's say that. So, but I was studying criminology and I wanted to be a criminal lawyer, mostly because I love debating and forming arguments. So then, second year of university, I did what's called College Pro. So some folks may have heard of it, but I started a window cleaning company, and through the summers. And so, I had my little, this red rocket car, like a small little dinky thing. And I would strap these 32-foot ladders onto the top. And I would, the place that I would clean windows, I wanted to go clean the windows of the really big houses, not the dinky houses of where I lived. So I would drive 40 minutes out to where all the rich people lived and where they had these big fancy mansions on the lake. And I would meet my team. I had 2 employees. One was my boyfriend at the time, and the other was my best friend at the time. Lesson learned, don't work with friends and family for me. And we would meet at 6 a.m. and we would strap on the ladders and we would drive out to these, mansions, and we would knock on the doors asking people, hey, we're students. Can we clean your windows? And I loved it. We would, we'd drive out. We would clean windows all day. I'd be running up and down these 32-foot ladders, sometimes in flip-flops. And when we were done the day at, 5 o'clock, we would go knocking on doors around the neighborhoods, trying to book more jobs for the next day. And it was very much like you had to work for your food. And so when the sun started to set, I would drive home, sunburnt and sweaty, and call more people, the lead list I had, trying to get more jobs booked in. And I just loved that freedom of, I'm in control of my destiny. If I want to make more money, or I want to book more jobs, or I want to hire more people, I can go out and do it. And so I didn't even know it was called entrepreneurship then, but that was a turning point for me. I was like, I want to do this, whatever this is.
How did you even hear about College Pro in the first place? Because I feel like, not everyone in college and university is like, what I want to do at 6 a.m. is clean windows. Like, that sounds like an exciting job.
Sounds like awful, right? So it was so funny. I had one of my friends in high school. He was like, yeah, I'm going to make 10 grand this summer. And I was like, 10 grand this summer? I was like, whoa, how? He's like, yeah, I'm going to run a window cleaning business. And so I, applied and did the interview. And then I was like, yeah, I'm going to make 10 grand this summer. And my parents were like, what is this scam you're doing? Like, these people get these students to clean windows and they take a cut, I was like, no, I'm going to be so rich. And so then that's how I kind of got into it. And his business, as we know, with any company, you get what you put in, and his business flopped, but I crushed it. I was like rookie of the year. I had, won these awards because I was really ambitious. I was like, I want to be the best window cleaning company owner, in this area. So I just loved it. And so second year of university, I'm halfway through, I switched my degree to business. And so it's like, there go all my electives. I'm just doing business and business courses. And that was like one turning point, I would say, for me.
And one thing else I find fascinating is even like the early days of where you're selling, there's always stuff you learn. There's stuff I learned selling 10 years ago that I still use to this day. And what I find interesting about, these kind of contained businesses where it's, you're one of, I don't know how many students they probably had running it, and you're selling to the same market. So it's like undifferentiated product, same pool of customers. So obviously one aspect of it, you just, outworked everybody at the bar, not everyone is driven as you, but putting that aside, like what ended up working as the pitch, knocking on someone's door. Cause you also pick hey, let me pick what I would think is the most difficult customer to close is this person who is in $1 million mansion, versus, a small home or something like that. What was the pitch that ended up working the best?
Yeah. So they gave us some pitch, this is where I learned to sell, is doing this window cleaning company. And I would recommend to anybody, go get a sales job, because my entire job now is selling. But the pitch, so a couple things work. One, the pitch was hey, we're students, this is our summer job, help us make some money. But really what I would do is spend time with them. The longer I could spend with them, if I could just get them to step out of the door and look at their house with me, and then I would book them in that day, like that would really work. So it wasn't just like, hey, can we clean your windows? It's like, hey, we're cleaning everybody's windows. We cleaned your neighbor's windows. Oh, I don't need my windows clean. I'm like, what do you mean? You live on the lake. And if I could get them out of the house and do a walk with me, and I would point to them, I would say, like, see those specks on the windows there? We're going to get right up in there and, use some elbow grease and clean them all so they're perfectly, spotless and clean all the rest. See all that like dirt under your eaves trough? We're going to scrub it all by hand, So it's like I had to show them, you need this. And the other thing that most salespeople get wrong is like, you have to ask for the job. That was the biggest thing. It's like all these other kids would go around and they would do the sales pitch, but at the end they would get nervous. And I would be like, when can we come? Like at the end, can I do this job for you? And even now I find when I'm talking to Lilia members or people who want to join, at the end of our calls, I ask them, I'm like, can I go on this journey with you? Like, would you like our help freezing your eggs? So nailing the pitch, a lot of trial and error, but at the end, it actually can make a big difference, as you well know.
Well, Axel agrees. The sales pitch is fire. There's so many takeaways. I'm sure anyone on our sales team that's watching, you'll hear, we have this term we use it internally called mutually agreed next steps. And so always come in with an ask, always ask for next steps, whether it's the deal, the next meeting. Yeah. And it's always the sequence of those, right? It's the first sequence, like come out of the house.
Yes.
That's like selling the meeting. Come out of the house. That's all.
Yeah.
You want to just look at your windows. I'm not asking for anything else. Just come look at the windows and then you go from there and go forward. So I love that. So at university, you do a few years of college pro, and then I guess the next pivotal moment, a pivotal moment we share in both of our journeys is Next Canada, or Next 36 at the time. And so maybe for those who are not familiar, we have people watching from all around the world on this show. What attracted you to this program? Tell us a little bit about what it was and ultimately, why that's important to you in your life.
It's funny. The honest truth was, in my mind, I thought if I could get into Next, my future will be, I'll have made it, my future will be set, which is such a ridiculous thought now, such an immature look on life. But at the time it was like, I knew I wanted to start a company. I knew I wanted to, run a business. And my friend, Duncan Bays, who also did College Pro, he was visiting me in Sweden. I was on an exchange. And he was like, yeah, I'm doing this program, Next 36. They take who they say are the top 36 young entrepreneurs in Canada. They put you in teams, you start a company, and, you get funding. And I was like, oh, well, that's the pinnacle. I want to do that. And so I actually applied to Next 36 and I didn't get in the first time. And I was super devastated. I was really sad, and I didn't give up, and I applied again and I got in. And the biggest, I think what was most important for me in that experience was I was in a new pool of peers, like a new level of peers. I had really only been surrounded by folks in Windsor, and now here I am in Toronto, and I'm used to being top of my class and a real gunner. And it's like, wait a minute, everybody here is used to being the best. And so it really, I think it corrected my view that I'm not just competing with the people in my city. I'm competing with a much broader and elevated pool of talent here. And so I absorbed so much from that experience, and I was really hungry to be forced to up my game.
And so in that program, for those who aren't familiar, it's taken many evolutions. But I think in my year, and you were the second or third year. Do you remember? Third year. We were basically put into a team. You had a random team like I did, or did you get to pick your team?
Yeah, no, we didn't get to pick our team. We were placed together. Yeah.
So to frame it for everyone watching, imagine you just roll up into it's a program, and then on Monday you're selected, and here are 2-3 other people you're starting a company with. Here's 25 grand is what they gave us. I don't remember what they ended up giving you guys, but here's money. Here are people. go make something happen. And for anyone who's done this at least once, you'll know the people part is by far the hardest part, because you're going to be doing a lot of difficult stuff together. Anyway, so that's the stage of where we both came through for our careers. But tell us a bit about that first, I guess would be your second business idea after College Pro, your first company idea. I think it was called Glimpse, if I remember.
Oh my gosh. So actually, when I started out, our company was called Trainify. Everything at that time was Ify. Like you just added Ify, Shopify. It worked for them. Yeah.
Easy.
So what was really good about this was Next told us, pick a problem you have, right? And we know to this day, this is the best way to start a company. And so we all brainstormed what problems do we have? And I had been working in fast food. Remember, I worked at McDonald's. I got fired. After I got fired, though, I knew I couldn't go home without a job. So I walked down the street to Pizza Hut and got a next job so I could go home and say to my dad, look, I got fired, but I got another job. So I had been working in fast food. And I was like, oh, the training really sucks. Like they bring you in, these teenagers, they give you 2 days of training. You have to learn everything at once. And then you go to actually do the job and you forget everything you learned, of course. And so we were like, let's do that. And tried it out, didn't get a lot of traction. And then we had the idea for Zapier.
If only.
Okay. If only. So, and then we looked up, we're like, oh, they're YC, like they're already off to the races. So then finally I ended up switching teams and we had a company called Glimpse. And the problem Glimpse was solving was finding a neighborhood to move to. So a lot of times when we move, like all of the real estate sites cater to the attributes of the home that you want. And I don't think anybody has solved this yet, but we know what's mostly true for people when they move. What matters first is the neighborhood you live in. Like, do you want something bustling and, busy like the financial districts of major cities, or do you want something, calmer and cozier and more green? And nobody was doing that. So that's what we were trying to solve. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we were not the right team to do it. And none of us cared that much. And so, at the end of the program, we ended up saying, we all wanted to kind of just do different things, but learned so much in the process of identify a problem, see if you can solve it. And what I now know is called founder fit, explore whether that is there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so after those lessons, you start jumping to some great companies here in Toronto. But at that moment, once you decide, okay, I'm not moving forward with Glimpse, what was going through your head of maybe I'm going to start another idea, or what were the decisions you were trying to make at the time, and what ended up? How did you make the decision to end up joining Top Hat?
Well, actually, so there was a little moment before Top Hat where I knew I wanted to start another company, and I was broke as hell. So just got out of university. Next, as you know, we do not make money through that summer. So I was like, I want to start another company, but I literally can't. So I worked for, 30 seconds at CIBC. Okay, not 30 seconds, a few months. And had my soul sucked from my body. And it was just every day was brutal. Nothing I did mattered. Nobody cared if I had an impact. If you worked harder, it didn't really matter. So that was a good learning of okay, big company out for me. And then through my friend and roommate, Laura Long, who's now at Google, she was in my next cohort. She had met this woman named Malgosia and who worked at Top Hat. And I had realized that I wanted to explore marketing. I was really good at sales, but I sometimes envied the people on the other end of the line with me. I was like, I want to be sold to, and with marketing, I saw it as sales at scale. How can I sell to 1,000 people at once instead of just one person on the phone? So I was interested in marketing, and, Malgosia was looking for a marketer. So, did the interview there, hustled my way in, and was one of the early folks at Top Hat, really early marketing team, less than 100 people when I joined.
Wow. And so you spent time there, and then you kind of continue this path to Care Guide. And so between the two things, slowly now we're getting to the story of Lilia, but you were very, I guess, fortunate the timing with both companies. You helped to drive, massive growth for these businesses, and you kind of observed of what it was like to go from an early idea, an early team, to something that was scaling. So if you kind of summarize those things in terms of tactics, like what are some of the things you learned in marketing back then with either company that you still use today that others could take inspiration from?
Okay, honestly, the biggest thing that I still use today is you need to party where your customers party. Is like hang out where they hang out. And so that's something I learned and realized at Top Hat and at Care Guide that I use today now, where I'm like, okay, where are women like me who don't want to have kids right now, are too busy to do, research and really manage this process? Where are they hanging out, physically or on the internet? And so what we did at Top Hat, Care Guide, and now Lilia is we just tried a ton of channels. Like, you just don't know which one is going to work. And so we would be very scientific and have a very scientific approach to our experimentation, where we would try it all, set a small budget, see what the return was, and decide, do we invest or divest? And most companies are built on a channel or two. So you really only need to find a couple of repeatable channels to really build your company on. So yeah, that's major for any marketing team, for starting any company. Is like the first users you got to hustle for, but once you start to find a little bit of product market fit, then you got to find something repeatable. And so that's what I would do. Where are my customers partying?
And so for Top Hat and then for Care Guide, what ended up being the kind of winning channels? How'd you find them?
So for Top Hat, SEO was a big one. Content was a big one. But truthfully, for a while at least, I don't think they do this anymore. But when I was there, something that worked really well was we would provide professors with iPads. And so we'd email. We get lists of professors and we'd email them saying, hey, try out Top Hat in your class and we'll give you an iPad. The professors were like, hell yeah, and it really worked. With Care Guide, it was super interesting. So SEO was a big part, especially product-led SEO. So other than that, we found this channel. It's kind of, I guess, it's not widely applicable. Like, you can't just go copy this channel. But what we found was Care Guide is a marketplace, right? So we owned sites like CanadianNanny.ca, Housekeeper.com, PetSitter.com, Sitter.com, where you would post a job, I'm looking for a sitter, and sitters would come to the platform and you would find each other. What we found was if we could post a job on job boards, so post on Indeed, and then people who were already there would find our job and come to our site, create account. And so it ended up building this really virtuous kind of flywheel that also like populated our marketplace and ended up driving sales. And so that was a really good example of like, where are people already looking for jobs? Where are they already posting jobs? And then going there. Once we tried it out, we were like, oh, dang, this works. And start to systematize it.
Yeah. So it's obviously, it's because the meta learning there, if I kind of frame it in another way too, there's a source of like traffic where you could just piggyback off of kind of someone who's doing it generally. Like if you go to Indeed, it's like, oh, I'm jobs for everything and anyone. And you're like, we're going to stake our claim in this narrow vertical. And so it's kind of a, I guess luck is the wrong word to use, but it's a very kind of fortuitous partnership that wasn't really a partnership that you could just kind of create on your own. Right? Of like, we're going to own this vertical. Well, we're not competing against all the jobs, but we're just competing in this little segment. And then you're going to come to us and we'll take care of you.
And other companies figured this out too. Like, we were kind of alone on Indeed for a while. And we were like, our competitors haven't figured this out. And then Uber and Lyft started, really bidding out a lot of folks on Indeed. And so they caught on too. Is like, where are people looking for jobs? General job sites. And so, we're like, okay, finally, eventually these guys caught on, which was good. But, there are tons of examples of other companies who have taken this approach too. Airbnb, people, I read an article saying, oh, Airbnb got off the ground because they did press. No, Airbnb failed at press for like a year and a half, and it is never what actually got them off the ground. What actually worked for Airbnb was they would post their listings on Craigslist. Where are people already looking for places to stay for cheap, right? Craigslist. And so they would post their listings there, and then people would go from Craigslist to their site, sign up, and they would populate their marketplace that way. And so it's like, in the beginning, most startups need some kind of, like, I don't even want to call it a hack, but it's like some place where there's already the audience aggregating that you can almost infiltrate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not an article that's going to get you to take off.
Yeah, well, it's these kind of free customer acquisition channels, or free, or like your only cost, I guess, is the effort to scrape it and organize it and kind of go after it, but there's no paid media cost behind it. And there's so many different stories we've found, from our founders too. But sorry, I interrupted you.
And like, eventually we called. Oh, that's okay. Eventually, this jobs channel we called it ended up costing us, but it was. It made sense. This was something I made up in College Pros. Like, it's got to make sense and sense. Sense and sense. So, like, it made sense and sense. So,
sure, right here.
As long as it's paying back, then we can spend on it. But at the beginning, it was just like manual cranks, putting UTM parameters, tracking it. Did that work? No? Okay. Try the next thing. And you never know what is the thing that's actually going to take off.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So I mean, now we're kind of at the height of your time at Care Guide. The business is cranking. You have all your channels going. Obviously, you've had this history of wanting to start a business and wanting to start a company. What kind of tipped you to say, like, you know what, I'm actually going to try to build something? Because you don't immediately leave and start this company. You're thinking about ideas, testing ideas.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit more about what are some of the ideas you were testing and what inspired you to start doing that?
Well, I started to feel this, fire in my belly again of, I need to start something. Care Guide, that's where I really cut my teeth. And John, the founder, was such a cheerleader for me, gave me so many opportunities to grow and to experiment and try things. And like, that was major to my career. And I'd been there 4 years, and I had a team that was cranking, our channels were cranking, and everything was really going well. It was like probably not a good time to leave, but I just felt like that fire in my belly. And so I started thinking about what might I want to do. And it's funny, Lilia, I say it found me, like it pulled me. I know I had talked to you about these other ideas. There's one other one I considered at the time. I've always hated going to a restaurant. I'm impatient, right? So going to a restaurant and the payment process is awful. It's like, and the ordering process is just awful.
I remember this idea, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you and I sit down, and we start our conversation, but we have to wait for the waiter or waitress to bring our menu, and then we have to wait for them to come back to order, and then when we're done, we have to like stop our conversation and flag them to come and pay, and then they bring the machine. There's just so many interruptions, and so I was like, I'm going to start a company that solves this problem. And I'm proud of the approach I took. What I did was like, okay, let me see where is the problem? What do restaurateurs think of it? So I remember walking up and down King Street, just going into every restaurant. Hey, can I talk to the manager? And asking them like, hey, tell me about what are the painful parts of payments for you? Like, and just asking them a lot of questions, like, tell me what's hard. Why is that hard? And then floating to them my idea and seeing how they responded to it. And, they were mostly lukewarm. They were kind of like, yeah, I don't know if this is really a problem. And I had written out this whole business plan, this Y Combinator application. And at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I'm not the person to solve this. I don't own a restaurant. I know nothing about the industry. I haven't worked in payments. And like, this is a problem and someone's going to solve it, and it's not going to be me.
Yeah.
And so I remember I had taken a vacation. I took a week off to explore business ideas. And it was the end of my vacation. I was like, damn, like, I don't have one. And then on the Saturday night, I had this idea because I had been in a 10-year-long relationship that came to an end. My stepmom had gone through early menopause. I was in a relationship with somebody younger than me, and I was thinking about my fertility. And I had kind of had this idea for building, a fertility-focused company. And so Saturday night, I was like, what do I have to lose? I'm gonna just spin up a website for, at the time it was an at-home fertility hormone test your ovarian reserve. I'm gonna spin up this site. I'm gonna put like $200 of Facebook ads on it. And I remember, drinking a glass of wine and being like, okay, who are the people like me? And just like picking the Facebook audiences that I thought were like me, And I went to bed and I remember thinking like, no one's gonna sign up. So I built basically like a fake checkout. So the site was like, hey, Canada's first at-home fertility hormone test. This is what it does. Buy it here. And I would have, they would start the checkout process. So it's like name, what's your shipping address? All these things. And then once they went to checkout, it'd be like, damn, we're not in your location. And so that's what I was testing. So I went to bed. No one's going to try this. I'm going to go back to work Monday. And I just keep going, I guess, And I woke up the next day and I got all these orders, like tried orders. And so I was like, there's something here. And then I started to kind of think about it. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to build a venture scalable tech company that helps women. Like this is I think my life's purpose. And I thought, I've got a marketing background. I can be the spokesperson for this thing. The market is nascent and blowing up. And I started to run out of reasons why it wasn't the perfect time, why I wasn't the perfect person for it, why the market wasn't right for this innovation. And I would talk about it to just people and friends, and they'd be like, that's a great idea. Like, are you raising money? And I'd be like, nah, not really. And they'd be like, well, I would write a check. And then I was like, oh. And so I was like, well, I'll take out a safe. And it just kind of happened. People were like, I would chat with them about it. I would tell them the story of what happened, and they'd be like, can I invest? And I'd be like, okay. And I spoke with John at Care Guide, and he got excited and was like, Alyssa, this is it. This is the company for you. And the stars all kind of aligned, and I went out and made the leap.
And so I think you're underselling what happened of how much you raise and what you use to raise all of that money. So if I have my count, you raised $800,000. Yeah. And you had a PowerPoint deck.
I didn't even have a deck, actually. Wow. I refused to make a deck. I had an email.
What was in this email that you think convinced people to part with a collective $800,000 to put into your lovely idea, which I encourage everyone to check out here to learn more about where it's gone.
Yeah. So, what's funny is like, what happened was first I started out raising a small amount. I was like, okay, fine, I'll raise like $250. And I didn't even realize at the time that this was a smart thing to do. Like start raising low. And then that $250 filled really fast. And then I had this momentum. I was like, oh, I hadn't announced I was leaving Care Guide. I hadn't talked about raising money. So then it became a whisper, like, did you hear Alyssa's, leaving Care Guide and she's raising? And it's like, and so I think what worked well was I was kind of a known entity to a lot of folks. And I didn't have like a pitch. I would just take them through the story. I'd have coffee with them thinking they're just my friend catching up. And I'd be like, yeah, I had this idea, this problem I'm solving for myself. I tried this fake door test. I got all these orders. It's the right time. I'm the right person. The market's growing and I ran out of reasons not to do it. And people are writing me checks and they'd be like, can I write you a check? And so then people would be like, give me a deck. And I'd be like, I don't want to make a deck. Like, I didn't see myself as being in fundraising mode. And so a friend of mine who, who's a fantastic entrepreneur, he was like, look, if people are writing you checks without a deck, like, don't start making a deck. So I just wrote an email that summarized kind of what I said. It's like, look, here's the problem. Here's what I want to build now and in the future. Here's how I know it's going to work. And I would share, the results of that fake door test. And here's why I'm the right person. And this is what I'm raising. This is how much is committed. Like, let me know if you're in or not.
There you go.
And they'd be like, send me a deck. I'd be like, well, I have this email. But it worked.
Yeah. That's all it is. I mean, it's It's funny actually. There's another alum from Clearbank doing something similar, kind of helping you skip the deck in the fundraising process. So
Oh, nice.
we'll talk afterwards. But if you're watching, whoever it is, there's a case study exactly for for exactly that.
Well, and like what's important is a deck is a vehicle for communicating information concisely. Well, ostensibly, that's what it's for. That's what it's supposed to be for. And so, like, if you can communicate the same information as concisely in an email, like you're still, I'm still serving the purpose of a deck. So even though it's not, PowerPoint like they might be used to, it's not like I was just like, hey, shoot me some cash, and they didn't know what they were getting into. But it's just like, you just need, I think, a way to concisely and really clearly convey to people the problem you're solving, the size of the problem, why you're the right person, why it's the right time.
Yeah. And so the selling at that point is not over, though, because you obviously have found a channel that is working in this $200 test, but there's other pieces to the puzzle. There is, how do I actually ship these at-home kits? How do I find the clinic to do all that? And none of those things are easy or were easy. And so walk us through kind of once you had the money, or once you knew, okay, this is actually like a business and not just an email and an idea. What were the next things you had to do, and how did you go secure all those pieces?
I mean, most founders probably feel this way. I had no idea what to do or how to do it. So I just started trying, talked to people who had done some of it before, but like, I don't know. I just was really, it's like, okay, I need a lab. Who are the labs? What could I say to them? And what ended up happening with Lilia was we learned pretty quickly, we had this at-home test, and my vision and understanding the problem actually had really expanded, and the company evolved with me. And so what happened was, I had started by just wanting to understand my fertility in my body. And then what I learned was that, fertility is not static. It's not binary. It changes over time. And so I started learning about egg freezing. And when I learned that if you freeze, a certain amount of eggs young enough in your late 20s, early 30s, it led to over 90% chance that you could have a baby with those eggs later. I was like, I need to do this now. And so I froze my eggs at 29, felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders, was like, is this how dudes feel walking around the world? Like, I have the freedom of a man now. And that's when I realized, okay, I don't want to just build a little fertility, hormone kit company. I want to galvanize a generation of women to gain reproductive autonomy by freezing their eggs. And so it's a really kind of swift evolution that happened there. And so we went from how do we figure out to do these test kits to actually how do we, I hate saying this because it's like so cheesy, but like really how do we start a movement? Like how do we show women who are 30 this is a smart thing to do now? And so really, really soon after I raised the money, we got into Y Combinator. And that really accelerated the shift to this much larger vision. And so then it was about how do we find product market fit? Like how do we nail down and focus the problem we're solving? How do we build a product that's so good people tell their friends about it? And how do we find more customers like that? So that has been the journey since then, is obsessing about making sure people have an incredible time, so good they tell their friends, and like building something that people are grasping for.
And so now you can kind of fast forward to where we are today. If you'd summarize, if I go to hellolilia.com down there, what will I discover? What, who should go there? Why should they go there? What are you doing to help, this next generation of women? And then my follow-up to that will be, what were the data points along the way that said, this is the way I'm nudging my product roadmap to be more of this versus what you started with?
Yeah. So let me start with the second question. What I realized was like the at-home fertility hormone tests were actually getting in the way of egg freezers. Women who wanted to freeze their eggs, it wasn't necessarily because we had a fertility problem. It was because we just didn't want kids now. And we wanted to take the pressure off our relationships or our careers or dating. And so I started I've done since Lilia's inception, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews with women. And I just kind of put my hand up and say, hey, anybody thought about freezing their eggs but hasn't done it? You want to chat? And this was when we were trying to really narrow down what's the problem we're solving. And I would ask women, like, have you thought of egg freezing? What stopped you? What was hard? Like, what are your blockers? For people who did it, I would ask them, what got you over the line? And what I learned was, it's funny because it was the same problem I had, was egg freezing has been in the back of women's minds for years, for most of them. And they think, the problem is I just don't know what to do, where to go, how to start. Does this work? Is now a good time? It's really a problem of making it seem approachable. And so we were like, okay, we can solve this problem with a mix of tech and the human touch of a concierge. And so it's been through that process of talking to customers. I talk to customers and users every day, even though I'm the target demo. And so what we realized was like, one, women are thinking of this too late. We see egg freezing right now, or the majority, of the population sees egg freezing as a response to something's wrong, something you do when you turn 35 because you're, almost out of options. And it's just not the best case for egg freezing. Egg freezing, or egg securing, as I call it, should be done early when we're in our mid to late 20s or early 30s, because that's when we have the most eggs that are the highest quality, as a way to preserve our optionality to have one kid much later, to have as many kids as we want, like as a backup, maybe to never use them. And so it was like, egg freezing isn't because you have a problem or there's something wrong with you. Egg freezing is to be done early so that you can do whatever the hell you want. And that was like the shift we realized we needed to make in the market. And so we, the product truly started with a PDF. It was like, one woman, she was telling me her problem. I don't have the time to research. I don't know which studies to trust. And I was like, okay, well, if we made that for you, what would you pay? And she told me, and I was like, okay, give me your credit card. And I went out and we spent 2 weeks on the first version, and we got all the studies she wanted and put all the information in one place. And she was super happy. And then the PDF has now slowly turned into this very much, it's definitely we're foundationally a technology company, but there's that human touch to assist people through. And so you asked me who should go to Hello Lilia or consider it. It's like any person with ovaries who doesn't want kids now, and there's a possibility you might want them in the future. Like if you're thinking of securing your eggs, earlier is always better. And it's not just for people who think they're going to have a fertility problem. This is so you have every option available. So have ovaries, don't want kids right now, might want them later, probably want more than one, or might want one, later on in life. And I would say people who are busy. So if you love doing tons of research and spending time calling clinics and calling your insurance and you don't mind doing that, Lilia is really not for you. We're for folks who prioritize convenience, want it done well, and just kind of handled. So founders actually make up a majority of our customers.
Yeah,
probably unsurprisingly.
and to kind of reframe the value prop for those watching, what's the, I guess I'd say egg freezing or egg securing is the product or the technical outcome, but emotionally and career wise and personally, and whether you can speak to yourself or other people who've used Lilia, what's the why is it, what are they getting out of this experience and going through this process? Because there's the search process, but then there's the actual freezing process, which is not inconsequential. It takes time, it takes money. Why is that important? What's the impact it has on lives of women that inspire you to do it every day?
Yeah. So you're right. Egg freezing takes about 2 weeks. It's about 10 grand. It's no small investment. It's the best tool women have for reproductive autonomy and freedom. I think there's no equality unless there's reproductive equity. And right now, men can just wait much longer than women to have kids. And let me give you my story. So I was in a relationship with someone 4 years younger than me. And I started feeling this pressure of, okay, are you going to be the person I have kids with? And if not, I start doing the dating math. Okay, well, if it's not you, then we need to break up right now because I need to meet the next person. And, then I'm going to be going baby daddy shopping. Each date is going to be, are you going to be the father of my children? And so I froze my eggs when I was 29. My partner and I actually just split up after 3 years together. And I don't know if I could have, if I would have been able, frankly, to leave a relationship without knowing I had this security, you know, like it really brought in another element of being able to let go of a relationship that, being able to let go of that relationship so that I could go and, you know, take the time that I need to work on my company and eventually find the right person. And so it's like egg freezing is, I see it as control. It's peace of mind. It's optionality, but only if you do it young. Like if you're waiting until you're 37 and 38 to freeze your eggs, your outcomes are not going to be the same as if you did it when you're 30. So like the reason to freeze your eggs is for the freedom. It's like, take time to meet the right person, leave bad relationships, take time to build your career, you know, and not have to worry about finding somebody right now. It really is like the weight of the world I felt off my shoulders.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. And the fact that you're able to build a company that guide people through this, I think is really impressive. And this is the part you had touched on before that I'd love to dig into now with this context of like how much of an emotional and pivotal life decision it is. Have you made decisions on, you know, what's more human versus what's more automated? Because I think that's a lot of things people struggle with, where, you know, someone who has the same idea as you and wants to tackle this problem be like, I'm just going to be a consultant. I'll do all the research. I'll do it one-to-one. Right. But, you know, there's probably some things you lose there. And so through your research, you know, walk us through kind of high level the experience and how you made that trade-off of decision. Where is it human versus where is it automated?
I think we're still figuring that out with every turn on our product. And so what we need to figure out is like, which moments of this experience is it imperative there's a human on the other end and which are not? You know, which parts do you not really care if you're filling in a form or talking to a human on the phone? And, you know, what we find is it's really important, especially in the beginning, for women to chat with us so they just realize how normal this is. Like, egg freezing is the future. And, you know, I think in the future, it's going to be the de facto 30, you know, women are going to graduate and they're going to freeze their eggs. It'll be the de facto graduation gift and this symbolic moment of womanhood and going on to do whatever the hell you want because you have all your options open. And so every woman I talk to, I'm not joking, like 98% of us have this story in our head that we're behind, or, you know, that there's some fairy tale we were supposed to live up to. And I just hear constantly, like, by 30, I thought I would. By 33, I thought I'd. By 27 is actually the breaking year. I don't know what happens at 27. Like, something happens in our minds. And so it's really important for them to hear from somebody like, hey, you know, like, that's all fairy tale and you're not behind, and everybody feels this way. And once we make that emotional leap, people get really excited. Once we stop feeling like we're failing for securing our freedom and options, people are like, I can't wait to do this. It is the most radical act of self-love. And so once we, you know, build that trust and, you know, are like, we're here with you on this journey. What you're doing is awesome. You know, it's going to be a great time. We can kind of figure out, and we are, which are the parts that we can build technology around and which are the parts that people just need, you know, a little hand to hold.
I feel like just live here, we've made your like first branding campaign. I can see this in my mind. I can see the Facebook ads. I can see the TV campaign telling these stories of all the amazing women you've helped. So
yeah. That's what we need to do. And that's why it's like, I feel so cheesy saying it, this movement stuff. But I remember Michael Seibel, the CEO of Combinator, is one of our close advisors. And he even said to me, he's like, Alyssa, I think you have to start a movement. I was like, I think you're right. Like, so I don't know how to do that, but like, you know, I'm going to try. And it starts, I think I've been really open and vulnerable about my experience, and I don't feel, you know, any type of way about it. I feel really powerful and really smart for having, you know, secured my eggs early so that I'm not in a rush. You know, I'm 31 and I'm not in a rush. And I want every woman to feel this way. Like, she can wait to find the right partner, and she can just, you know, you can do you, and things will happen in your life when it's time to happen in life, not because of some timeline society has put on us that you need to live up to. Like, we're just not in the world anymore where we, you know, graduate, get married, have kids, buy a house, you know, start our careers. It's just not true anymore. It's such an antiquated look at what a woman's life is supposed to be like.
Mm-hmm. So as we're coming up on time, I'd love to kind of leave everyone with some thoughts on what are you most excited about with the company? Is there a particular kind of problem or nut you're trying to crack, or something you're going to announce and launch? Tell us a bit more about where your head is at and where you're excited to work on for now to the end of the year.
So like, I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood, but I think things are really starting to work. Like, we've been and we'll always be experimenting and testing, but things are just starting to feel a little bit easier. Lilia is spreading word of mouth. I'm seeing influencers I don't even know recommending Lilia as an egg freezing support for women. And our obsession with making the experience so great that people spontaneously tell their friends about it, I think is starting to pay off. And so that feels really, really exciting. We've got, clinics. So the way Lilia works is we started out with who are the very best providers statistically and experientially, and we're only going to work with those. So when you come to Lilia, we've vetted top providers and we're going to get you express access. You're going to skip the line. And some of the best clinics are reaching out to us, like pulling from us, to work with us. And I'm just really excited that we're starting to just serve more women. It's really cool that every day we get to work with people who are securing their eggs and then get to go off and do whatever the hell they want in their lives. And so being able to reach more people, we're starting to find some channels that are working, is just like what this has all been for. And so one thing coming up that I'm really excited about is egg freezing is maybe surprisingly, actually inherently a little bit social. Like, women talk about this very frequently, and our early male investors may not have expected that, but it comes up often because it often comes up around dating. And so we're going to be doing some work to highlight some of the women who have secured their eggs and just give more examples of different ways to carve your own path. And so I'm really excited about, one, celebrating and highlighting these women who are making really smart decisions for themselves. And then two, showing to the world, like, this is a viable path. This is the new normal. And you shouldn't feel any type of way about taking charge of your reproductive autonomy.
That's awesome. Well, I think we'll leave it there. So for people who want to tune in and see all these great stories, where should they go? How can they find you?
HelloLilia.com. If you have ovaries and want to secure your eggs, come chat, come hang. I hang out on Twitter, sometimes on Instagram, but I would say Twitter. My handle's Alyssa Atkins.
Alyssa Atkins. We'll drop that in the comments afterwards so you guys can find it. But thank you all for tuning in, and this is super fun. We can stay on for a few minutes afterwards, Alyssa, but to everyone watching, thank you all for tuning into another episode of Founders. Check out hellolilia.com to learn more about the amazing movement that Alyssa is starting, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye, y'all.